Hello everyone, this is Robin, the Delta Crafter, and today I'm going to be sharing with you a video on using an electronic die cutting machine to make Christmas cards, or any kind of card for that matter. So I have a Cricut machine, and I've had a Cricut machine for at least 15 years, since they really came on the market several years ago, 2 decades ago, almost 2 decades ago. And I have loved having my Cricut machine. I've actually had several Cricut machines because the original machine we affectionately called the baby Cricut. But anyway, I have evolved over the years, and my use and abilities have evolved as well over the years. One of the things that I've learned to do is to take images and create shaped cards. So what I mean is, as you can see on this screen, I have a couple of ornaments as well as a gift box that I've turned into shaped cards. So these ornaments do not have a solid backer to them, but because they are round, I knew that I could add a shape and weld those two shapes together to make a card base that is in the shape of the ornament. There are lots of videos on YouTube that can explain how to do that, so I'm not going to go into detail right now on how I did that, but just know that I'm going to ungroup these right quick and show you that this ornament is what can be found in Cricut Access. And so I took this ornament and then welded two circles together to make a card base, and made sure that the card base was just slightly bigger than the ornament. This gift box is an image also available. All of the images I use today are available in Cricut Access with a Cricut Access subscription. But this gift box was originally green and red, and available in the Cricut Access. And so what I'm going to do is just add this image to a 4¼ by 5½ or A2 card base. And so I'll show you that in just a minute. But I just wanted to get on and show you the basics of what I've done in my Cricut my Cricut design space to create these shaped cards. One other tip that I want to give you is the reason why all of these things are the same color, so like the two ornament detail designs as well as the box are the same color, is because when I get ready to make these cuts, if I go ahead and click make, and then it brings me to this page, the ornaments will all show up on the same cutting mat. But then what I can do is I can take and I can move the ornaments around, or the cut files around, and I can lay them out how I want to. So Cricut is going to think, the machine is going to think that all of these things are going to be cut on the same mat out of the same material. What I can then do is manipulate this by making this bow, placing some paper in these parameters, that's red for the bow. And then I can place some paper in these parameters that's green. And then I can place some glitter cardstock over here, and so forth and so on. So I'm tricking the machine into thinking that all the materials are the same, when in fact they're different, but it keeps me from having to add or send through one sheet one mat that has just the red on it, and then I have to load up a second mat that has just the green on it, and then a third mat that has just the gold glitter, and so forth and so on. So I'm kind of tricking my machine and getting it to do what I want it to do. So now let's take a look at putting these cards together. Off screen, I cut all the images out and have taken them off the cutting mat. And now I'm going to use the negative space to be the guide for me laying down the pieces of the image. Using a 4¼ by 5½ card base, I'm going to lay the negative down and tape it in place in order to use it for my layering template. So now I'm going to put down some liquid adhesive in order to apply my pieces to the card. And I'm just going to lay those pieces into the negative space like I'm doing right here. And that makes sure that everything is aligned and in the exact place that it needs to be according to the cut file. Adding the last two little top pieces here. And now when I lift up the negative space, you'll see that everything is laid perfectly in place. Now I'm going to add the red ribbon and bow. So the long piece goes down first. And here I'm going to measure the little red piece up against the bow to see which direction I need to lay it down in. And sometimes you have to do that because the cuts are not symmetrical. So I figured that out. Excuse me. And you'll notice that I use a piece of painter's tape to pick up the pieces of the bow off of the cutting mat. And I did this because I wanted to make sure that I got all the pieces in the exact space and placement that they should be. I didn't have a negative space to use for this to lay those pieces down. So using the painter's tape to pick all the pieces up in the exact placement that they needed to be was a great option. And to ensure that all the pieces stay there, I'm using my bone folder to pull them back off of the painter's tape. And there we have it. You can see my bow hangs off of the edge of the card just a tiny bit, which is fine with me. And there's a little bit of space at the bottom, which later on I'm going to show you what I do with that. So now I'm going to go into layering my sentiment. So this word, or for this card, I'm going to use the word Mary. And I designed this cut file and uploaded it into Design Space. I designed it in Inkscape and then uploaded it into Cricut Design Space to cut, because one of the things that I don't see a lot of in Design Space is sentiments that have a shadow behind them. So never fear, I'll design my own. And so I've done that, and now I'm going to layer up a couple of layers of the background of the shadow and to give it some dimension. So off camera, I layered up 3 layers of the shadow of Mary. Now I'm going to add each individual letter. I used the Broadway font to create this this sentiment because it was nice and chunky, and therefore would be easy for the Cricut Explorer to cut it out, or whatever machine you use, Cricut Explorer, Cricut Maker, Silhouette, whichever machine you use, a chunkier font always cuts better. So I'm layering down each of the letters in the word Mary, and that's going to create a beautiful sentiment for this card. You could put any word that you choose on here, but in this cut file, it's going to include this this image that I created for Mary and the background shadow for Mary. So now I'm going to glue my dimensional sentiment onto the gift box. And there we have it. A beautiful card that we created with the Cricut electronic die cutting machine. Now we're going to move on to the ornament files. So you can see here the swirl ornament has been cut, and I don't know if you noticed on the edge there, but it tore a little bit when I got it off, was taking it off of the cutting mat. But because we're going to be gluing this to a base, that's really not going to show up, and it's not going to matter. So we can proceed on with this cut. So I've taken my card base, I folded it in half and then creased it with my bone folder. Now I'm going to add some liquid adhesive to the glitter cardstock of the intricate cut file, so that I can add it to the card base. Using the liquid adhesive really is best in intricate files like this, as well as when you're layering images on one on top of another, because the liquid adhesive will give you an opportunity to just a little window of time to be able to move the image around. See right there, you can see where it's torn a little bit, but we're going to fix that. Like I was saying, you get a little bit of time to move things around if they are if they lay down just a little bit off center. So the silver glitter card is done. Now let's move on to the gold glitter card. And this one came off of the matte intact. So yay for that. So now I'm adding the liquid adhesive to the glitter detail file or part of the image. And we're going to lay that on top of the card base and hold it down. So now that our detail images are glued to our card base, it's time to move on to the sentiment. So once again, I've created a cut file with the word Santa and a shadow behind it. And for this file, or for this sentiment, I have used the Bigola font. I think that's how you say it, or Bigola, B-I-G-O-L-A. But that's the font that I used to create this sentiment and cut file, and it will be included with the with this cut file. So I've layered up about 4 pieces of the shadow for this one. It's just because that's how many I ended up cutting out with my Cricut. And now I'm going to add glue to the actual sentiment. And this is where using liquid glue with a fine tip nozzle really comes in handy, because some of the pieces or some points in this sentiment, they are very, very tiny and thin. And so using the liquid adhesive helps a lot. Another thing that helps in placing the sentiment is using tweezers. I would have never been able to pick this up and get it in alignment like I am the first time if I had been using just my fingers. And this, again, liquid adhesive allows me to move the sentiment just a little bit in order to get it placed in just like I want it. So I placed my acrylic block on top of the sentiment in order to hold it down. Now I'm going to place a ribbon onto the silver ornament, and that's going to be the finishing touch for the silver ornament. I'm going to glue the Santa sentiment onto the gold card. So now the silver one has a bow, and the gold card has the Santa sentiment on it. For the gift box card that's coming up in just a second, I've cut off 1/4 inch off the bottom to make sure that it will fit in a A2 envelope. Thank you for joining me today on this video. If you've enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Delta Crafter. Before I go, I have some news I want to share with you. I've started a blog, The Delta Crafter. As a way to welcome everyone to my blog, I'm going to be giving away the cut file that I designed and that you see present here in this video on my blog. There'll be a link to the blog in the description of this video, and if you hop over there, you can grab the Cricut cut file so that you can make these cards as well. Thanks and enjoy. Bye-bye.